Shalom. This week we are reading Parashat Naso in Sefer Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. You know, we live in such a beautiful world. We have everything that we need. The world just seems to cry out the glory of God. Such a beautiful place. And the physical world itself carries a stamp of intelligent design, the presence of God in everything. But in Parashat Naso, we meet up with a very enigmatic, elusive individual, the Nazir, the Nazarite. And even though we're living in this beautiful world where we would think everything that was placed in this world is for us to somehow utilize, if not to enjoy outright, to serve God, to find God in. We have this character called the Nazarite. Nazarite is a person who apparently, like Wordsworth, feels that the world is too much with us, and he somehow has a hard time navigating through this life without somehow reining in his physicality and his attachment to this world. So he or she, this person that we read about in the beginning of chapter 6 in Parashat Naso, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, a man or a woman who shall disassociate himself by taking a Nazarite vow of abstinence for the sake of Hashem. It's a really interesting, and I think it's pretty accurate translation here. We read these words, a man or a woman who shall disassociate himself, because in Hebrew the word is ish o isha, a man or a woman, ki yafli lindur neder, who would somehow separate himself. So this person who, as we are going to be reading here in chapter 6, his vow of abstinence, what the Torah seems to be mostly concerned with here, certainly is focusing on, is his abstinence from wine or anything associated with the fruit of the vine. Also grows his hair and can't become impure from contact with death, even to his own immediate family, even to his own parents. So obviously this person who takes this Nazarite vow of abstinence is going to truly be somehow separated, disassociated from the community, growing one's hair long, kind of looking not like fitting into society, not even being able to engage in basic structure of expressing grief for a family member, and again, the main vehicle symbolically of the experience of the Nazir, this abstinence from wine. So this is a person who really feels the world was too much with me and I need to really focus on my relationship with Hashem. Too dangerous, too tempting maybe to be involved in the physical world. This person is a monastic or an ascetic. Is that what we would call it? We have these words, just words to me, of course, but I look them up. You could too. Asceticism, from the Greek, which I can't pronounce, for exercise or training, describes a lifestyle characterized by abstinence from various sorts of worldly pleasures, often with the aim of pursuing religious and spiritual goals. Monasticism, from the Greek, derived from the Greek monos, alone, is a religious way of life characterized by the practice of renouncing worldly pursuits to fully devote one's self to spiritual work. So, is this something that is a Torah concept? Well, obviously there is room for that in the Torah because we have here this concept, this world of mitzvot, this idea of the Nazarite. But is it an ideal which is expressed by the Torah? Is it something to strive for? Perhaps we could relate to it as maybe being a personality type. You know, there are type A people, there are type B people. Maybe this is a personality type, someone who feels that I can't handle this distraction. And I have to be walking along this separate way, this disassociated way, so that I can really develop my relationship with Hashem. Now, he can do this or she can do this for a period of time, and I guess the idea is that the person is going to finish up this exercise feeling strengthened, feeling renewed, feeling somehow realigned, and having some sort of new edge or dimension of the relationship that they sought with God. But very telling is the process, as the Torah continues, of the completion of the term of the Nazarite vow, wherein the Nazarite, on the day that his abstinence is completed, brings himself to the entrance of the tent of meeting, later, of course, to become the holy temple and its permanent location. Shall bring his offering to Hashem as follows: one unblemished sheep in its first year as a burnt offering, one unblemished ewe in its first year as a sin offering, and one unblemished ram as a peace offering, a basket of unleavened loaves, etc. This is the offering of the Nazarite, who we almost have to label as the penitent Nazarite, because one of the ingredients of his kit now in reinstating himself to the community and bringing these offerings is a sin offering. Strange. Here you have a man who seems as far from sin as we could imagine, a monastic, an ascetic of sorts in a Jewish sort of way. A person who felt the world is too much with me. That's not a person who I would normally categorize as one who is sinful or pertaining to sin. Yet one of the ingredients of his offerings is a sin offering. So there's really one overriding opinion about this that expresses, and I think in a very beautiful way, that the sin offering, says this sage, is on account of the fact that this person abstained from wine. And that's the sin. And again, on the symbolic level, it's not really just the issue of wine that the Torah is talking about, but utilizing that concept to express to us that this person decided, I am now going to separate myself from the world, wine, as representative of what the world has to offer. We could call it beauty. We could call it fruition, maturation. We could call it something that is also double-edged sword, like the one that was placed at the entrance to the Garden of Eden, because things in this world can go two ways. I mean, wine can be the element by which we sanctify God in the world, and it is in fact the element over which we offer our testimony that God created the world. And at every event that marks holiness and the passage of time, we sanctify time and bless God through wine. But yet at the same time, wine can be the very unraveling of the very divine image in which we were created. It can be something that can lead us to selfishness, to giving into our baser and more lower instincts. So it's that double-edged idea. So he abstained from wine, meaning that he really kind of made himself a shortcut, because he was never going to be getting involved during this period of abstinence in this double-edgedness, in the possibility or the capacity of falling into the other side of what wine, meaning this world, could be. During this period of abstinence, he's going to walk a very narrow path and not get involved in anything that could lead him astray. At the end of the period of abstinence, one of the ingredients of his regathering into society is a sin offering. So states the Midrash, in the name of this great sage, the sin was his abstinence. In other words, the Torah here would seem to be indicating that the normative path of being in this world and somehow training ourselves, working on ourselves, learning how to deal with the challenges, the tests, the possibility of going either way. That's the challenge of the human condition, of being a true servant of Hashem. And we shouldn't necessarily have to separate ourselves and go this route. Although there is another opinion, just to be fair, much more exotic, a minority opinion that expresses a profound idea that maybe this fellow is bringing the sin offering because he shouldn't have stopped. Because once he was on it already, if that's what he needs, if that's his type, if that's his thing, then maybe he shouldn't have even stopped his vow. Maybe he shouldn't have come to the end of his period of abstinence because, you know, he was onto something and he maybe would be ascending further and further in whatever realm of spiritual cognizance that was unavailable to him before, so maybe he shouldn't have stopped. But again, that's a bit exotic. The main idea expressed by our sages is that the very act of abstinence was somehow not so straight, not so preferred, not so ideal, and therefore maybe, okay, this fellow accrued a certain measure of righteousness, of purity, of separateness. All of those things are good in his desire to have a more fixed walk with Hashem, but ultimately he lost something at the same time. He lost something, so that's why he has to bring the sin offering. But I think the most amazing idea about all of this, when we really consider it deeply, when we really think about it, we have to remember that a sin offering can't be brought for an intentional sin. The very definition of a sin offering, a korban chatat, in the Torah is for an unintentional sin, a shogeg. Now wait, this person is instructed by the Torah to bring a chatat for a kapara. Obviously there's something that he has to atone for, and essentially what he has to atone for is the fact that he abstained. But wait, it was an intentional act. It was certainly something that he thought through. It was a decision that he made, and he made a vow. Unless we understand the deeper level here of this chatat, of this sin offering, and yes, it's true what our sages tell us, that a sin offering applies to an unintentional sin, shogeg. And I think that the idea here that this really expresses with our friend, the Nazir, the one who took a Nazarite vow of abstinence, is that when he brings this offering, he's made to realize that this was a mistake in his theology. It was a misdrawn conclusion that he made. And it was a good try, and it was a noble attempt, but the message that shines through, the strong message that the Torah is conveying through this whole scenario, and there are many complicated halachot that apply and refer to the whole adventure, as it were, of the Nazarite. The Torah is really expressing to us is that this is not the desirable path. This monastic or ascetic approach to life is not what he intended, because he did put us in a beautiful world full of goodness, full of wonder, full of things that are especially designed to relate to us and to fill us with joy and excitement in our very physical state. But that the challenge and the test of a human being is not to get confused, not to get distracted, to be able to walk that path of being with our feet on the ground in this physical world, but yet elevate the physicality to a usefulness, a connection to God. And thus, the Nazarite, coming full circle, brings his korban chatat, his offering to atone for his very mistaken idea, his mistaken theology. He really got a little bent. He went a little bit off the path, and he realizes that by bringing the chatat, because that offering can only atone for something that was mistaken. So what was mistaken here? His idea. He went through what he went through, and it stood him in good stead, but hopefully now he'll realize that this world, with everything that it has to offer, both good and bad, is the place to be. The place that Hashem wants us to be in, and that the path from which we can serve him best is not that of the monastic, not that of the ascetic, but that of the one who trains himself to live in this world and yet to find the Hashem in everything and be able, through the very physical, beautiful, challenging, testing world that we live in, to live a life of purpose and dedication to the presence of God.